In my younger days, just after high school, I was what most would consider a vagrant. No home to speak of, but not quite homeless either. Growing up poor in a poor, dying factory town assures few things. But most of the kids in my town knew and understood clearly that the only way to escape such a bleak place was to leave, find work somewhere else, and don't come back unless you want to be trapped forever. And I was no exception to this understanding. It was the result of this desperate retreat from certain poverty that led me to work as a laborer in the pipeline industry. Grueling work, but decent pay. A fair start for one such as myself. After about 3 months of working, my foreman, who we will call Jay, discovered I was staying at a motel and wouldn't have it. He was kind enough to invite me to stay with his family until I found an apartment, and I was grateful for his offer. Jay and his family were honest rural people who lived in an honest rural area. A house with a barn and a field surrounded by the wooded hills of Chillicothe. No neighbors and one road in and out. Very similar to houses I had seen and been around growing up. It was a great area and great company, and I was thankful for such a turn in my luck. The first evening I stayed there, Jay's wife got me situated in my room, and I became acquainted with everyone in the house over dinner. After our meal, I stepped out for a cigarette and decided the tree line behind their barn would be the best area to smoke privately and inoffensively. The sun had set and then some by the time I stepped out of the house. The moon was high and full, keeping the valley I was in dully illuminated, and casting the surrounding hills as dark shadows against the star-filled sky. A night that I think most would find peaceful. But as soon as my boots met the grass, that primal instinctive warning that a man gets sometimes began to slowly creep into my core. That alarm that tells you, something ain't right here. Being young and dumb and brave, of course, I shrugged it off, and continued to the tree line, attempting to keep the growing feeling at bay. When I at last approached the shadowed tangle of trees and underbrush on the outskirts of their yard, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my pack of Marlboros and my matches, and struck it alight. As I brought the match to my cigarette, I saw it. Mere feet away from where I was standing, just barely within the trees, was the stark and outstanding silhouette of something huge. It stood hunched over, and still had to be at least 7 feet tall. Large pointed ears and a narrowly elongated snout. Its eyes glimmered that weird infrared color you see when animals reflect light in their eyes at night. Oh my God. Oh my God, there's a wolf. That's a wolf, were my initial panic-stricken thoughts. It was in the midst of this processing that I realized there was no way this was a wolf, because wolves don't stand upright, and this creature was unmistakably on 2 legs. It was slouched low. One arm hung down past its haunches, and the other was pressed firmly against a tree to the right of it. Broad shoulders and savage posture. It didn't move. It didn't seem startled or threatened, or afraid, but simply aware. It knew I saw it, and it knew that I knew. I wish I could say I did something. Anything. I wish I could say that I ran, or that I screamed, or even moved. But I was frozen in fear, standing rigid as a statue with nothing but a quickly dying matchlight between me and whatever monstrous thing was in front of me. We locked gazes for what felt like hours, but was really probably only moments. And as though the creature had decided it was done terrifying me, it straightened up and backed away slowly into the darkness of the trees. No sound, not a broken twig or rustled leaf to be heard. As soon as my legs allowed me, I ran like hell back to the safety of Jay's house. I slammed the door behind me and was met with a look of concern from my foreman and his wife, who were watching TV in the living room. "There's something out there," was the only thing I could gasp. Jay exchanged a glance with his wife, and looked back toward me.
"Boy, if you're gonna stay here, you need to understand that there's things out there in them woods that you best not pay attention to."
He said it so nonchalantly, like he was talking about last night's football game.
You hear a strange noise, you ignore it. You see a strange shadow, you ignore it. And if you get a strange feeling, you come inside and forget you felt it. There are things out there we just don't understand, but we respect them because it's their land. We just live here.
It's been 15 years since my encounter with that creature in the woods, and I still think about it often. And though I stayed with Jay and his family for another 3 weeks after that night, I never felt easy on his property. That feeling never left. That warning stayed alert. And I will never go out into the woods at night unless I have absolutely no other choice. Once you know what's out there, you never see things the same again. I know this might seem far-fetched, and I know that many won't believe what I'm saying, but this story I had to share. The month of August always brings up memories of a particular experience that I still question to this day. I've had a few things happen to me, some of which I've shared here, so thanks in advance for your reading time. In the town where I spent the majority of my teenage years, I got to know the guy who ran the kiosk for one of the local gas stations. His name was Kelly, probably a few years older than me. I was about 16 at the time, and we became what I would call good acquaintances. He was pretty distinctive looking, long curly hair, on the slender and tall side, liked to wear a lot of dark colors with a battle jacket, usually a jacket often of denim material, with many patches of rock and metal bands sewn into it. This was the early 90s. We were always friendly toward each other. He at times would sell me cigarettes underage. Fast forward a few years, I was about 18 and pregnant. I wasn't showing yet, and I was trying to keep the info of said pregnancy to myself. I had stopped at the kiosk one day to gas up my car, and Kelly was working. For some reason, after these few years of friendly conversation, etc., he chose this time to see if I would possibly go out with him. I didn't mention the pregnancy. I honestly had no idea what to say. I stumbled over my words, and somehow got across to him that it wouldn't be a good idea. I was living in a different town at the time, so I definitely didn't see him quite as often. But now, of course, it was awkward. Fast forward again, maybe a year later. I was now a young mom and driving with my daughter in the car right around the corner from the kiosk where Kelly had been working. As I drove, I could see a figure on the side of the road hitchhiking. It was Kelly, unmistakable. I didn't stop. I didn't stop because I had my daughter in the car with me, and it was a split decision on my part to drive right past him. Kelly stared at me as I drove past. He knew my '87 Thunderbird. I got home about an hour later and called a good friend of mine. I told her I had seen Kelly hitchhiking earlier, which seemed weird because he lived right in town. It would have been easy enough for him to walk where he needed to go. It took me a moment to realize she was completely silent. "Dude, you don't know?" she said. "Know what?" I replied. "Kelly killed himself a few days ago. His mom found him." At the time, I was opening a can of SpaghettiOs to put on the stove for my daughter. I dropped it. I told her that was impossible. There was no way the guy I saw today hitchhiking wasn't Kelly. It couldn't be anyone but Kelly. But it was true. Some of you might wonder why I didn't know about it since we were friends. But again, we weren't friends that hung out. We didn't run in the same circle of friends. This was literally a few years of just seeing each other at the kiosk where he worked. Part of me tried to figure out what I was more shocked and upset about. Was it the fact that he was in so much despair that he had done this to himself? Or the fact that I had seen him well after he had passed? And another thing I think about, what if I had stopped to pick him up that day? That's the thought that still haunts me. I live in a small town in rural Australia. I'm a cyclist and I coordinate sports events, marathons, sell bikes and gear and whatnot. Around 6 a.m. this morning, I drove my bike up the mountain, and on the way, I passed a woman sitting by the side of the road. At first, I thought she could have been a hitchhiker, but there are no hotels around here and she had no bags. I stopped and grabbed a bottle of water out of the car boot and walked down to see what was going on. This is the moment I realized she's one of the most gorgeous women I have ever seen. She was probably about 20, pale as fuck, long wavy blonde hair to her hips, and one of those really German kinda hourglass figures. Really blue eyes. Like this chick was crazy hot. She was wearing one of those long summer dresses that beach kids seem to love, which was weird for the middle of the Australian bush. So I'm walking towards her like, oh my god, but I'm also thinking, what the fuck? I hand her the bottle of water and ask if she's lost or needs a lift back to town. She just stares. She doesn't take the water. She's not even blinking. I think, oh shit, she's some kind of crazy. So I ask her if she ran away from somewhere, and she just says no. I ask if she's waiting for someone to come pick her up, and she says no again. She's still not blinking. I ask where her house is, and she says, here. I'm halfway up a mountain. There's no houses around here. I was kind of starting to get creeped out by this lady. I start walking back to my Jeep. I was going to drive back down the mountain and call the cops and get someone to come sort this lady out. I had no signal, and she follows me. I was like, look, are you sure you don't want me to run you back to town? And she just says no again. So I'm like, I don't feel comfortable leaving you here in the middle of nowhere. And she just turns around and walks off into the brush, miles from anywhere. And I'm just standing there like, what the hell just happened? And then I really got creeped out when the bug and bird noises started to come back. It made me realize I hadn't heard a single other sound while I was talking with her. Like no magpies, no crickets, no early morning sounds at all. I hightailed it out of there and called the local coppers when I reached the bottom of the mountain. I basically just said I saw a woman up the mountain who refused to get in my car. And then I realized how messed up that sounded and hung up. Sometimes I wonder if I hallucinated the whole thing. What the hell was that all about? In 2016, I was a junior in high school. I didn't live too far from school, but it was still about an hour walk. I was in pretty good shape back then, and didn't mind the walk when my older sibling couldn't pick me up due to work. My parents were both at work too, and I hated asking friends for rides because it just felt bummy. Anyway, I start to walk home on a nice September day in Florida. About 5 minutes down the road, I got the feeling like someone was looking at me, and I turned around. Standing there, about 50 feet away, was a clown. This was back when the killer clown sightings were at an all-time high. It was late September, so I just assumed it was an early Halloween prank and shrugged it off. I turned back around and kept going. Another 5 minutes went by and I couldn't shake the feeling. So again I turned around, and he was about 30 to 40 feet away now. I was, needless to say, pretty nervous at this point. I turned back around when I heard a snap. Next to me, just inside the brush between subdivisions, was another clown. It was clear this wasn't a prank anymore. Sensing I was in danger, I started sprinting, The one from behind me yelled out, "Fucking grab him!" They were chasing me. I could clearly hear their footsteps. I scanned the nearby houses and thankfully saw a police cruiser in a driveway. I got there and banged on the door until someone answered. The cop, seeing me shaken up, looked around and saw one of the two holding a decently sized hunting knife. He told them to freeze. They both bolted, and I never heard anything more about it. To this day, clowns unsettle me. I don't even like seeing a picture of them, whether it be a birthday party clown or Pennywise. Now, it could have just been a hoax like the rest of them at that time. But that being said, it's also possible that I could have died that day. So my grandpa recently passed away, and I remembered a story he used to love to tell. This was back in the late 60s, early 70s. He was driving down some road in the middle of forest in the mountains in Pakistan. It was the middle of nowhere. He was heading back home from some trip. While he was driving, he saw a man wave at him, standing at the side of the road. It was dark and foggy, so he couldn't really see him. My grandpa thought he might as well help the guy, so he stopped and the guy got in the back of the car. My grandpa asked him if he wanted to come sit in the front, but he declined. As they drove, the guy started mumbling and talking to himself. My grandpa looked back, but the guy, in a woman's voice, said,
I don't think that's a good idea. You don't want to look at me.
My grandpa freaked out, turned back, and kept driving. Some time passed, till the guy, in yet another voice, asked to stop, right next to an old graveyard. Scared but relieved, my grandpa slammed the brakes. The guy then offered to pay. Grandpa said no, but he insisted. The guy gave him a 5 rupees bill and got out of the car. As he pulled away, my grandpa looked back, and the guy wasn't there. My grandma kept those 5 rupees, but unfortunately, we lost them. I want to share an experience I had while training with my NG unit at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. I have not ever been big into paranormal activity as a subject of interest. I originally got into these topics by looking through Reddit, but the deeper I dug, the more I found what seems to be genuine people sharing real experiences. This sub, in particular, strikes me as largely honest and earnest. And in that spirit, I wanted to share a story about one of the few unexplainable instances that have happened in my life. Certainly the most significant. Sorry for typos, I'm doing this on mobile. I am a member of the National Guard in Wisconsin. I moved from enlisted to officer via ROTC, and was attached to a unit in my prospective MOS while in the program. I don't really want to give specifics on my service, as the community is small enough to identify me to peers in the unlikely circumstance they're on this subreddit. In 2014, my platoon decided to conduct nighttime land navigation at Fort McCoy. While the Army is typically all about buddy pairs, night land nav is one of the few cases we can do things solo if we so choose. Having done night land nav plenty before, I step off alone, compass, map, and headlamp in hand. For those who do not know, land navigation involves seeking out markers on a course by plotting their coordinates on a map and moving there via terrain reference and compass. At night, this is typically done without light as much as possible. When light is used, it's red. This minimizes damage to night vision. Ostensibly, these methods also keep you concealed in a tactical environment when employed with noise discipline. I bring this up so you can understand a few things about my circumstance. I was moving through the woods while making a token effort to be hard to spot and hear. The woodland I was in was part of a larger forest system, but was frequently traveled. That night, we had about 15 soldiers clomping around. My illumination was a toggleable headlamp, but was toggled to be red when turned on. To cycle to white light, I have to turn it off twice. The cycle was off, solid white, off, flashing white, off, solid red, off, flashing red, off, solid white. My assigned points will take me to the other side of the course and back. A good hour and a half of walking as the crow flies. They're more or less in a straight line, so I estimate 2.5 hours out and back. I know if I come back too early, I might be given another set of points. So I resolve to walk out, take a break for an hour, then mosey on back. The first half of this goes as planned. I get my points without much trouble, and wind up sitting on a hillside at around 10 at night. It's cloudy, but the moon is full. I can see wellish when the sky is clear, poorly when it's not. Occasionally, I see a red light bobbing in the distance below me. Once a pair of platoon members passed down the hill from me, using white light to try to read their map. I startle them when I ask if they needed help. At the end of my break, there's no more motion in my area. Most people had likely already walked out and back, or they were too lost and took the hand-railing road home. I'm feeling pretty at one with my surroundings, having sat in the same spot eating stale Skittles for a good long while. Owls hoot, trees sway, all is well. I trot down my hill and step through some brush. I'm in a clearing where prairie intersects forest. There are some dead trees in the area. One of them is split halfway up. At the top, about 15 feet up, I can make out a head and shoulders silhouette against the clouds backlit by the moon. I walk up to ask how they got up there, and if they're stuck, when the shadow twitches, and I get the impression it's turned toward me. I stand there looking at it. The situation feels off, but I'm not going to let a battle buddy punk me. I ask if they need a hand. Mid-sentence, the moonlight comes back. It's clear the thing is not a soldier. This moonlight glimpse is the best look I get at the thing. It looks like a stretched-out bald person. Its long arms are clutching the tree. I can't make out the face, but it looks pinched. By that I mean I couldn't see its eyes or mouth, like they were small and in the middle of its head. It's skinny like it hasn't eaten, but it's tall and obviously strong to have made such a vertical climb. It was definitely facing me. It probably was the whole time I was in the clearing, maybe since I came down the hill. Maybe my speech startled it. I swear loudly. It rapidly scurries down the trunk. I flick on my red light and catch it on all fours moving towards the brush line in the direction I'm heading. Automatically, I keep toggling the lamp to be in white light. That means it goes off, then to flashing red. In the flash, I see the thing at the wood line, but I think it's flipped around and is backing in, probably to keep eyes on me. In the few seconds it takes for me to get to white light, it's gone. I scan the tree line, which is silent. When it moved, there was a scraping noise, plus the woodland brush is dense. If it was still running, I would hear it. I reason that it must have stopped. It must still be watching me. I fumble out my knife and keep looking around the woods in front of me. After ages, I start inching along a perpendicular path to my initial route of travel. An angle that will link me up with the hardball road that runs up and down the side of the course. Once on the road, I can take it back to where my platoon is parked. My major problem is that the road is 10 minutes of walking away from my current position, mostly woodland. That can't be helped. I have to get out of the clearing first. My progress on that front is painfully slow. I'm fighting my natural urge to freeze in place like a deer in the headlights. After sidestepping a good 10 meters, I hear a corresponding rustling and think I see movement. It's enough to get me to turn and bolt, right into a downed log which trips me. I scramble up to my feet and look back to the woodline, where there is an audible commotion. I glimpse a leg and ass moving back into the woods. At this point, I'm done with the whole situation, but don't want to run again. I start power walking to the road, turning to look as much as I can, while seeing what the thing is doing. Over the movement of my own kit, I can hear it moving alongside me, parallel. As I near the end of the clearing, I think I hear it picking up pace, as if to cut me off. I make the decision to sprint. When I enter the woods, my path is clear, but I think I can hear it in my periphery. I don't stop and run hard until I hit the paved road. I bite it hard a few times along the way, but recover with a frantic speed I cannot consciously replicate. Once in the road, I run perpendicular to the forest until I don't think I hear it anymore. I'm winded from my breakout run. From the middle of the road, I have good visibility and decide to walk to catch my breath. It's quiet for a while. Then I hear a branch snap from around 30 feet in the air from the woods I had just fled. I look up and see a pale ovular face, half in shadow, peeking at me from around a tree. I take off again. Finally, after too long, I make it back to the headlights of our LMTVs. It's 12:15.
What happened, cadet? Did you get lost out there? You're covered in mud. Why are you out of breath?
I got lost on my way back. Yeah, I rolled down Pikes Peak. I was running to get back in time. I knew better than to claim I saw a monster. My reaction already had left me feeling foolish. In the years since drilling at FMC, I have never experienced anything like that again. McCoy does not have a history of disappearances, as far as I know. Neither do the two closest towns, Sparta and Toma. I've done night land nav alone a few times since without issue. This is less about courage and more about me deciding I must have misinterpreted a situation. After diving into paranormal subreddits, I'm coming around to the idea I should trust my own account. Maybe the world is weirder than I thought. If anyone has had similar experiences elsewhere, or hopefully an explanation, please let me know. Thanks for making it this far. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. Links to all my shit are down in the description. It would be cool if you would hit the like button or the dislike button, either one, or comment. Any type of interaction might help me get suggested to other people. I haven't been around for a minute and I missed you guys. Things have been crazy, but here I am. And I hope everybody's well, and be good to animals, even people. Sit. This is how we do it. This is how we do it. Who lived in an honest rural area. I hate that word, man. Rural. I mean, what a stupid fucking word. It's on like Donkey Kong, bitch.